You've dedicated your life to making a difference through education. What inspired you to do that?
I believe my grandmother inspired me to do that. I come from a family of educators. My grandmother back in Wilberforce, Ohio, was an educator at Central State University, and she probably is the person who inspired me most to go into education.
So you came from this very small town, which was part of the Underground Railroad system,
Yeah.
that had 2 colleges in this small town. And both of your grandparents, 2 of your grandparents were professors
Correct.
there. And what was the environment like? What was it about your grandmother that inspired you?
So Wilberforce, as you said, is on the Underground Railroad in Wilberforce, Ohio. There are 2 historically Black colleges and universities there: Central State University and Wilberforce University. And both of my grandparents, my father's parents, were associated with both of those universities. And my grandmother was a pillar in that community. She landed there. However she landed there, the family owned a tremendous amount of property and named streets after themselves. So we grew up in a community that was a very solid middle class African American community with families connected to both of the institutions.
So here you are, you and your 2 siblings,
Correct.
living this idyllic life as a child where education is forefront and center. And then your world went upside down. And your mom came back to her roots in New Haven as a single parent. She was a nurse. And all of a sudden, you're running the home while she's out working, more or less. Is that?
Yes, so you're right. The idyllic community got turned upside down because of tornado. The Xenia tornado of 1974 came through. That was the largest tornado that broke out on this day, where the majority, there were many tornadoes that broke out in Tornado Alley, and the worst one blew through my town, unfortunately. And so as a result of that, we moved back to Connecticut because that is where my mother is from. My parents got divorced. We moved to Connecticut, and yes, I found myself in 4th grade being the big sister in the family and taking on those responsibilities.
And I think you have said that that was your first introduction to being a leader, where you were running the house and really handling a lot of the responsibilities that a parent
Correct.
normally would.
Correct.
Did that feel natural to you, or was it just, I had to do it?
It felt like it was something that somebody had to do it. And so it was me, and my mother was a single parent, and she was going to the University of New Hampshire for school. And so she did that on the weekends, and we were home by ourselves. And I just stepped up into the big sister role and did what I needed to do to make sure my sister, brother, and I were all taken care of.
So you're home running the show, kind of feeling like a big guy. And then you go to school in New Haven, and it's a very different experience than Ohio.
Absolutely. And so I loved the school that I went to in Ohio, and didn't like my school that I went to in New Haven.
What was happening there?
Fortunately.
What was happening in school?
We came from the country, and I figured we probably looked like kids who came from the country, dressed like kids who came from the country, spoke like kids who came from the country, and I think we were a target for bullies. So we lived in a house on one side of the street, and then the housing projects were on the other side of the street. And my brother and I were bullied pretty badly. My sister wasn't. And so it felt like a regular daily occurrence at this school.
So bullying is probably one of the biggest issues that kids are facing today, and not just in person, but cyberbullying and all sorts of bullying. What would you say to people who are experiencing bullying, and particularly, parents for kids who are being bullied?
Yeah, so I can't even imagine what it is like to be bullied in 2025. When I was bullied in the late 70s, early 80s, we knew the bullies. We saw them. They were there. And the bullying that exists now, and I saw this when I was a building leader, a lot of it is virtual. unfortunately. And so students who are getting bullied now, sometimes they know who the bullies are, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the bullies don't even know them. It's just a pile on. And so I think that it's really important for families to recognize when this is happening and happening immediately, and getting themselves connected to the services and supports that the school might provide.
So, as an educator, you must come across this pretty frequently. What are some of the signs that parents should look for that would key off my child's being bullied?
I think avoidance of certain activities that students that children used to like, avoiding to go to those bullies. I think those activities. I think withdrawal from activities that they liked, withdrawal into their rooms, just an unwillingness to engage sometimes might be signs that something is going on. Not really connecting with the friends that they used to connect with is also a sign.
And this might be, I don't know, a silly question, but if parents are seeing some of these signs, where would you suggest they go?
So yeah, that's a challenge. So some it could be a relative, it could be the school, it could be the pediatrician, it could be, particularly if there's so many children right now are in therapy, it could be the therapist of the child,
Wow.
the school counselor. There are supports at the school. It could be a coach. It could be, any of those other people.
So seek out go down the counseling path of the school?
That could be a path, yes.
I guess it just depends.
Yes. You'd have to feel that out. I mean, part of it is where the child has the relationship. Sometimes the child doesn't have the relationships, trusting relationships
Right.
at the school. It could be in their church. It
Right.
could be in a community organization. It could be with
Right.
sports.
So here you are in New Haven
Yeah.
in a very different school system. The bullying aside, was there a huge difference in your education?
Yeah. So I found that there were, and it's possible because I was just older when I landed in Connecticut and in New Haven. And so there were other opportunities. And so I had a wonderful, wonderful teacher who saw something in me, saw something in my brother and in my sister, and recommended that we be a part of a program that Yale University had for students to do extraordinary things outside of the school day.
Like an after school program?
Yeah, it was an after-school program, and it was a summer program. It's called the Ulysses S. Grant Program, and so this teacher recommended to my mother that she consider us applying to that program. And so my brother and sister, we were of age, and so we got into the program, and we ended up going to Yale University after school. After we did a
Wow.
full school day, we would jump on the city bus and go downtown to Yale for more academic experiences on campus.
So think about that. Here you're in one of the most economically challenged inner cities in the country at the time, and you're hopping on a bus, and a half an hour later or 20 minutes later, you're at one of the most prestigious universities in the country.
Mhm.
And being a kid, did you think about that, or were you just like, "Nope, I'm here, then I'm here"?
I didn't think about it a whole lot. I did realize that I felt a lot happier. I was receiving the academic challenge that I wanted. I was in a community of other people also seeking academic challenge. So I knew that I was in a different place, thrived in that place, and looked forward to jumping on that city bus
Yeah.
and going down to Yale.
And I have to believe that you felt just a little bit special because you were in this program at this really great university.
Without a doubt. I felt special, and they made us all feel special. Yes.
Which probably helped your self-esteem, which was getting booted around a bit.
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's funny how often it comes back to just one person in your life, right?
Correct.
Who's willing to reach out.
Right. And that's why teaching is so important. I think we all can think about that one teacher or 2 or 3 teachers that made a difference, that if it wasn't for that person or persons, we would probably be on a different trajectory.
Is that what inspired you to be a teacher?
I don't know that that particular thing inspired me to be a teacher. I actually fell into teaching by accident. I think that I was resisting becoming an educator, coming from a family of educators, didn't feel like, education was a well-paid field. And so I actually fell into teaching by accident in graduate school when I was in Washington, D.C.
All right, let's cycle back. So you're in New Haven in the public school system, but you're part of this Ulysses grant program.
Yeah.
And then something happens that you end up going to a private boarding school.
Correct.
Take us through that.
Right. So when it came time to go to, actually, my brother, unfortunately, got into a fight defending himself at the school. And my mother's a single parent, went to the principal to seek some kind of support here. And the principal's response to my mother was, literally, that boy ain't going to give you nothing but trouble. And my mother said, I'm out. So she pulled all of us out of the public school system.
With no plan.
With no plan. Pulled us out, but enrolled us immediately at the Catholic school.
Okay.
And so when it came time for me to graduate from the Catholic school, 8th grade, to go to high school, I did not want to go the path of the Catholic schools because I would have been in all girls schools. I didn't want that. I did not want to go to public school because I was going to be back with the kids that bullied me. But I was exposed to the prep school world through Ulysses S. Grant. And so that's the route I went. I went on some tours of prep schools in Connecticut and Massachusetts and decided that I was going to go to Loomis Chaffee and Windsor.
And it must have been a little bit scary. You're leaving home. You're going as a boarding student.
I don't know that I was particularly scared. I knew that this was the path that I wanted to go.
Got it.
And I was going to make it work because I was unwilling to stay at home and go to school in New Haven.
Right. So you go to a very nice elite boarding school. And what was that like for you?
So it was interesting. As a freshman, I was the only African-American girl that lived on campus. So coming from a community where I was in the majority, here I am in a community where I was very, very much a minority. And so the other African-American students that went to Loomis came from Bloomfield, they came from Hartford, they were day students. But I thrived in that school. I love my high school. I had all kinds of exposure to different kinds of people, different kinds of courses and experiences. And so I really enjoyed my time at Loomis.
In a way, did it feel like you were coming home? In other words, back to your Ohio roots where education was kind of the most valued thing?
Right. But education was valued, and I was in an environment, a competitive environment, which I enjoyed also academically, to be around other students who had major aspirations beyond high school, and to thrive academically, and not only academically, but athletically as well. It was the perfect environment for me at that time. It's what I needed to grow as a woman.
Were your leadership skills growing? Did you find yourself in positions there, or you were just kind of enjoying being back in a competitive, healthy competitive environment?
I can't really put my finger on a particular leadership experience, but I knew I was growing and thriving athletically, academically, personally, socially, all of that.
Right. So down the road, you go to Spelman College for Women, and you're continuing your education. And then at some point, you said you did decide to go into teaching, or what led you back to teaching?
Yeah, so after I graduated from Spelman College, I went to Washington, D.C. because I was going to pursue a master's in health fitness management at American University. While I was there, we had to do an internship. It was part of the master's program. And so we had to find our own internship. And so just so happened, I happened to be in the department. A call came in from one of the schools in Washington, D.C. They needed someone to come to the school to do a talk about health. I happened to be there, and someone said, anyone interested? And I said, absolutely,
Yeah.
I would love to do that. And I did that talk about health and health outcomes, that kind of thing. And then that evening, the principal called me and said, if you will come and work for me, I will create a job for you at my school. And so I said I needed an internship. And so this is a paid internship. Everyone else was doing internships that weren't paid, and I jumped on it.
Talk about timing.
Exactly.
And talk about saying yes to something that's unexpected and making yourself
yeah.
available.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, the request came in, and I said, sure, why not? Let me see what this is all about.
Right. Why say no when you can say yes?
Exactly.
And it's that internship that then inspired you into teaching?
Into teaching, right, because it was an internship on the books for my experience for my master's program, but I was hired as a teacher for Washington, D.C. public schools. So
And you just went up the
teaching.
ranks and eventually went back to New Haven, and you've been in a number of really successful roles, which I have to imagine have their own challenges because you've got so many constituents. You have students and their parents, teachers, other administrators, staff, the Board of Education. How do you manage all of these different players?
Yeah, and so I have always felt that the hardest job, and I've had a lot in education, from teacher to building leader, chief of staff, chief academic officer, the most difficult one was the principalship. Because the principalship, it is somewhat of a lonely role, because you're the only one in the building, and there are a lot of people to answer to.
Right.
Just like you said, the principal, you have to respond on a daily basis to teachers, to parents, to students, your supervisor, the Board of Education, the superintendent, the community, the police department, the DCF. There are all of these other forces and people that we have to engage with as leaders. And oftentimes we have to engage and respond immediately. There is not a whole lot of time to think through a response.
Right.
You don't always have the luxury of saying, let me think about that. Let me get back to you on that. And it's fast going, upbeat, and always moving.
I never thought about that because in corporate, let's just say corporate America, there's lots of different constituents, but you're often preparing for a presentation or you're in a meeting and then you go back. But in your life, you're on the fly a lot and things are happening. And it's almost like you're in an ER.
Right. Exactly.
So what makes you so successful at operating in this, environment?
Because I stayed and remain grounded in my vision for success and what I want. And I'm very clear about that, and others are very clear. When I was a building leader, I wanted, having had a prep school experience, my vision for the school was private school experiences and opportunities on the public's dime. I wanted to make sure that everything I did as a building leader was aligned to making sure that the students were going to graduate ready to compete at and be competitive. And so not just compete with the students that were in New Haven public schools, but they needed to compete with the students that were in the private schools for opportunities beyond that. And that was my bar.
Right.
And in anything that I did, every decision that I made was always grounded and aligned to post-secondary success.
So you had this very clear business plan.
Right.
And you had these very high goals for your students. But things do get in the way. There's limited resources. There's teachers who aren't doing their jobs. there's a lot of emotionalism, I would imagine, in your day-to-day life. What is it about how do you maintain your groundedness and effectively interact with people who are, emotional?
Right. So I always made it clear I always led with my vision. Like I said, all of my decisions were aligned to that. And that's why when students would get in trouble, if they, and I had to suspend them, I could actually hug them. They would hug me. They understood that that was the decision that I had to make. And then they would go and then they would come back. Parents understood that. The teachers also understood that. There was a bar, there was an expectation for what they needed to be doing and if they veered off of that, and then I had to make other kinds of decisions, they knew. Folks knew why I made the decisions that I made because they were very much aligned to having a bar of excellence, like everybody. I didn't tolerate mediocrity. So, if teachers were performing in a mediocre way, students were performing in a mediocre, anyone performing in a mediocre way, I addressed it and people understood why that was because the students had to graduate ready to compete and have options. And I had difficulty sometimes. There were difficult decisions that I had to make with parents, but parents understood why that was because they too wanted competitive options for their child after graduating from high school.
So it sounds like communication is really important to
Mhm.
you. It sounds like you've got these clear rules and people understand your rules and you communicate the rules, I imagine, pretty frequently. So you try to lower the surprise element.
Right. And so the all of that is communicated everywhere. So it's not only something that's written, it's the way I led, it's the way I worked. And I always liked to be predictable. And so, there was no reason someone could come and ask for something.
Right.
People generally knew what the decision was going to be, how I was going to respond, because it was always aligned to my vision.
So in a way, you're giving them a little bit of the power because they could decide to live by these rules and live up to these rules
Right.
or not. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Mhm. So Teach for America is really different organization and very important today. We're really trying to get into these communities and elevating the teaching experience. So you say you could compete on a private school level in the public system. How do you recruit students today who seem to be a little distracted by salaries, jobs, having a steady career, so they're, finishing up their undergrad, and how do you attract them?
So we attract folks who want to be change makers. They want to be leaders. They want to have some kind of impact in an underserved community, either an urban community or a rural community. And believe it, there are lots of young people. Our numbers in terms of recruitment we're seeing an increase in the number of people who are applying. Unfortunately, when schools of education are seeing a decrease, and the folks coming out of school, they want to make a difference in their communities. And there are a bunch of different ways people can do that, but education is a path for many to make a difference.
And are these mostly students who want to be educators themselves later, or are they more focused on making a difference today?
They're focused on making a difference in leadership. So our program is a 2-year commitment. So anyone who signs up to come to Teach for America, they are committing to a community to teach and serve there for a minimum for 2 years. And so through that experience, they get their teacher certification. They are coached by us. They're supported by the school. And many people do stay in education beyond that because they see the impact that they are having in the classroom and in the communities. And so the majority of folks, when they go to the 3rd year, that's considered alumnihood, they stay. They stay in education. So what people might see is some movement, but the movement oftentimes is them leaving their placement region and going back to their home community with their teaching license in hand to teach in that community.
So you're really invested in this Teach for America, helping to raise the bar for educators in these tough communities. I can imagine it's not a 9-to-5 job. I'm imagining that it's pretty all-encompassing.
Whose job is not mine and theirs? It's not. It is not a 9-to-5 job. And so some examples of current core members in the 2024 Connecticut core, I was really surprised at the number of our core members who are giving, and our core members are the teachers, the educators. They are giving back to their particular communities. And so one young lady is teaching in New Haven Public Schools. This school she's a chemistry teacher. She's and they have an award-winning culinary program at the school. So this young lady is a first-year teacher designing chemistry courses. She is working on her master's in teaching, and she has somehow managed to design a chemistry elective with the chef of the program. So it's a culinary chemistry
Well,
class.
that sounds fun.
Exactly. And that's the kind of chemistry class I would have loved to have had in school. It would have helped me learn chemistry. So, she's another young lady.
And it answers the question, what am I ever doing with chemistry in my life, right?
And culinary and foods and cooking is all about chemistry. Another young lady who is teaching in a middle school has started a dance club. She's a dancer herself, has started a dance club, saw a need. There were students, male and female, who wanted an after-school experience, and so she has this club that she's doing after school. And so yes, it's not just the 9-to-5, design your lessons, go in, teach your lessons, and come out. It's really more than that. See what the need is at the school, see what the need is in the community, and figure out how you can plug in and make a difference there.
So you're overseeing all this. It's
Connecticut,
for
yes.
Connecticut. It's not a 9-to-5. I imagine you come home most nights pretty darn tired. What's fueling you? What keeps you fueled?
So what keeps me fueled is I'm going back to the vision that I talked about, and it's really about service and service to others. And I really want to help and make sure where I can have impact that I'm doing that and really supporting students and families and communities to go be their best selves and take their work to the next level.
And the concreteness of that, the concreteness of wanting to be of service to others, I suppose, is in seeing those students do well and in those long relationships perhaps that you have.
Absolutely. And sometimes there are relationships that go on and I never hear about them. And then there are others that I see. And so last year I had a student who is now in the Connecticut State Legislature. So she's legislature. And so I did some testimony. And when it came to her, she took a pause and just talked about me and the experience that she had at the school. I was.
Did you cry? I would have cried.
Others did. I held it together. I held it together, and then yes, later I did. And so so seeing that impact, and oftentimes you never see it. You just have to trust that you've done your part and that you send people out into the world and they do what they need to do.
Yeah. A lot of people would have been thrown for a little bit of a loop in any number of your experiences, sitting in a bathtub while a tornado is literally going by you, being uprooted and all of a sudden finding yourself in a very different socioeconomic environment. Let's just start with those. What is it that keeps making you so resilient?
I would say that those are defining experiences. Yes, they happen, but I'm not going to be pulled away and drawn down and just fall apart because of them. We're all made up of positive experiences and negative experiences, and so I take from that, I learn, and I move on.
Supposedly we have something like 60,000 thoughts a day, and I think 90% of them are repetitive. And some people keep tracking these bad experiences in their mind or stories about themselves, but you seem able to dump the 90% that's not useful.
Have to. It's a learning experience, and I move on.
Yeah.
I figure out what is it that I'm going to take from this, and I move on.
I love that
Yeah,
attitude.
I don't keep playing a negative tape
Right.
over and over
Right.
in my head. My family didn't. My grandmother didn't. My mother didn't. So I watched them
Yeah.
have, experiences that I'm sure and I know have just crippled other people, and they just shake it off and keep moving.
Right. Right. We didn't really talk about your mom, but from what you just said, I mean, her life changed very much, and it sounds like she wasn't crying in her milk. She was out making a life for herself and you guys.
Not at all. And she's 87 years old
Wow.
now. She just turned 87 in January. And she, too, is a very, very strong person. And I can only imagine, what it must have been like when when she sent the three of us off to boarding school. I don't know that I could have really handled sending all of my children to boarding school, but she had that experience with the principal
Yeah.
who said that very negative thing about
Yeah.
her, about her child.
Right.
And she said, I have to make a different path for my kids. And in order for them to be successful, it won't be in this place with a principal who doesn't believe in my child.
Right. Right. So if you were going to say something to your younger self now with the wisdom of all your years, what would you say?
I would probably tell myself to keep going despite any negative things that might happen. Like I said, learn from them and keep going and figure out how to have fun in that. Treasure the relationships that are meaningful. You're going to meet some folks that are supposed to be in your life for just a short amount of time. Some people you have to let go,
Yeah.
and others you will keep going on. And don't worry about the folks that you have to leave behind. Just keep moving.
You just said something interesting. I think as we get older, we get better at recognizing relationships that aren't feeding us and letting them go. But I wonder how many people recognize it's okay to just have this very short experience with someone.
And I find that way too many people hold on to toxic friendships, toxic relationships, either personal relationships or friendship relationships that we just simply need to let go if we're going to thrive.
And are you?
And it's okay.
Yeah. And are you sort of thinking about that all the time? I mean, is that sort of in the back of your mind just as part of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So as you go about life, and sometimes there's something you realize, something that someone has said or actions that they have taken that just aren't healthy,
Yeah.
go against your beliefs, and it's okay to let them go. And so I would probably tell my younger self, recognize that sooner rather than later. Don't waste time, because time is so
Yeah.
precious.
Yeah. And what would you say to all the people who are in organizations that have lots of different people and it's not easy and it's kind of a struggle? And, we both know, the city has had a struggle generationally. What would you say to those people who find themselves in organizations that are very troubled or not healthy or just, a bit complex?
So I think that in unhealthy places, have to figure out how to turn that around and make it healthy for people. What I have found is people don't thrive in places where it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if leaders and organizations want to really get the best out of people, they have to figure out how to make it a healthy place. And for people who are in unhealthy organizations and working in unhealthy environments, they have to figure out what's going to be their escape plan. It is just not healthy to stay in toxic places. We just can't thrive. There is a toll. You might not see it, but there is a toll that is taken on your body, on your health, on your spirit, on your relationships that is just not good. And so just have to figure out how to get out of that. There are other options.
So you touched a moment on the leader and how the leader can set the tone or define the culture. Do you have a specific, how do you see yourself as a leader?
I see myself, I am curious as a leader. I am a listener. I am very much collaborative. I lead from the back, not necessarily from the front. I definitely hire the best and the brightest people. I am okay with hiring people who know stuff I don't know. I cannot possibly know everything and should not be expected to know everything. So I am very good with assembling teams of people with particular expertise that complement one another. And my current team at Teach For America, the Connecticut region, we are a very healthy and thriving team because of that.
It sounds like your self-confidence and understanding of your own strengths allows you both to know how to build an organization where you're bringing in what you might not be strong in, which allows you to lead from the back. I don't know that you could lead from the back if you didn't have that confidence.
Right. And I'm okay with other people shining and other people getting credit and other people getting accolades. I like to see that happen because I feel like I own some of that.
That speaks volumes to you as a leader. So just in parting, what would you dream for today's youth?
Well, what I would dream for today's youth is a world where they are going to grow up and, like I said, thrive, have options, where there is more kindness in the world, and for people just to be healthy, whatever that is. And so there's obviously the physical health, but there's the spiritual health, there's the financial health, and just for people, our young people, to be able to do that. And I am concerned because I don't see that happening right now. But I would love for that to be a world where they can go, where people can be themselves, be loved for who they are, and where they can thrive.
So, okay, I have to ask a follow-up question because you can't leave without talking a little bit more about kindness. You talked about the importance of kindness. How can people learn to develop more kindness? Where does that start?
Yeah, well, it's hard if you yourself have been mistreated, if you yourself have been traumatized and don't even know what that feels like. I have met people who have just like a spirit of revenge, are unwilling to see the kindness in other people, unwilling to like let some stuff go. And so I think you develop kindness by exuding it and being kind and setting the example. And I know it's hard. I'm not going to say it is really hard. And so I wake up in the morning and I make the decision that is how I'm going to lead today. And it is so easy to be taken off track just getting in the car and driving down the street. And it's so easy to not be kind to someone who has clearly demonstrated unkindness to me, either, cutting me off, blowing the horn, all of that kind of stuff. So
I'm glad you were real enough to say it's not easy.
No.
Because it's easy to say the word, yeah, be kind. But sometimes
it's a struggle. It's a struggle all day.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you said it's a conscious decision.
Right.
It's not just something that happens. Well, thank you for spending time talking with me. You can easily see why Dr. Dolores is just so important to education today and to Connecticut. And Connecticut's lucky to have you.
Thank you very much.